who took what or who took which land. Money is not everything here. Some people might have been compensated in monetary terms, but others are sentimentally attached to their land, because that is the land they know, which they were born, perhaps. The second issue touches on the Kenya Railways pensioners, retirement benefit pensioners scheme. It is very emotive. I'm saying so, for those who don't know, I've worked in railway for 9 years. And it's a very big letdown to the pioneers of Kenya Railways, East African Railways, then Kenya Railways. They worked hard for these parastatal, these institutions, and even other related parastatals like the defunct KPLC, Kenya Post and Telecommunication, which demerged to 3 agencies. So what I'm saying here is that the mismanagement of these funds, which enormously totals to billions of Kenyan shillings, is very sad. And I think there is collusion between those in management, the actuarial bodies which run today affairs of the scheme. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, as I conclude, for other senators to speak, I am saying that the head must roll. The corruptions in this country is too much, and therefore it's important even people should revisit their moral concerns. I support Mr. Speaker, sir.
Senator Ochila, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my point of order is that we are very lonely in the other chambers. We've been trying to catch your attention, and seemingly all the members here are the ones visible, except only Senator Maruma. So my point of order is, you had indicated that I come from wherever I am, so I've come from wherever I am so that you are able to recognize me.
Can you then make your contribution? 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me an opportunity and to recognize that there is another chamber nearby. Mr. Speaker, there are 2 petitions here, one regarding pensions and another regarding internally displaced persons. Mr. Speaker, there are many factors that cause internal displacement of people, but the one that is sensitive and the one that most people speak to is one that is caused by politicians. There are factors that do this, economic factors, operations of the law, disaster, but we never try and settle our people who are displaced because of economic factors or factors that are disaster. In the county where I come from, Migori County, we have incessant flooding, we have the lake, reclaiming land, and many people are displaced year in, year out. The response we get from government time and again is that these people should move to high grounds. Mr. Speaker, I want to beg the committee to which this petition is being taken to also consider discussing internal displacement of persons caused by factors other than political disagreements or violence. Now, Mr. Speaker, regarding pension, the elephant in the room is pension in counties, particularly pensions that relate to former local authorities. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at all these counties, you will find out that there is no pension that is being prepared for retirees. If you look at counties, particularly the ones that have sugar milling plants that are state-owned, Mumias, Sony, Chemelil, the employees have not been paid for 1 year. I doubt whether their pension is being looked into and whether they are likely to get their pension when they retire. I want to request the committee to which this petition is being taken to ensure that they look at all the pensions in light of the fact that COVID. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, Senator Musurve, 2 minutes, and Honorable Senators, let us observe social distancing. I notice that we are slowly getting back into our normal operations. Please, COVID is real. Yes, Senator Masurube.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contributions. And Honorable Speaker, I want to really support the two senators, Senator Githiomi and Senator Mbito, for their petitions, because these are petitions that are revolving around people. And when you look at our motto, Honorable Speaker, the Senate motto revolves around the society and people, and that actually tells that we must represent people effectively. Honorable Speaker, concerning the petition of Senator Githiomi, in fact, when you are branded an IDP, that already sets a negative thought about someone. There is need, Honorable Speaker, for us to ensure that IDPs are given placement, and even when it comes to compensation, Honorable Speaker, the compensation of IDPs should be standard across the board, Honorable Speaker. There should not be that there are some IDPs who are getting less than others because they are all affected, and it's a painful thorn to all of the flesh, a painful thorn in the flesh of all IDPs, regardless of where they come from. Honorable Speaker, concerning the petition of Senator Mbito, it is a very viable petition, Honorable Speaker. These people, these members of staff who have already retired, they worked for Kenya Railways when they were energetic, they gave all their lives, and eventually their pension has been, swindled by people. Honorable Speaker, it is really painful that during your youthful years, you are doing a lot of work, you are giving your best, and when you're giving your best, you're hoping that your retirement will be okay. But it is unfortunate that somebody cunning is hoping that you'll give your best so that he benefits from your sweat. Honorable Speaker, there is need for this petition to be taken to a conclusion, because in 2013, this petition also was addressed by the court, but whatever verdict that the court gave was not honored. Honorable Speaker, justice should not be delayed. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Fatuma Dulo, keep it short, senators.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be very short. Number one, I wanted to contribute to the pension. Mr. Speaker, as my colleagues have said, the former local authority members of staff, they are really discriminated. The trustees are taking the huge chunk of their savings from them. I think that matter really quickly needs to be resolved, and I hope the committee will look into that. Number two, issues of IDPs. There was a lot of disparity in terms of how the budget was allocated or the money was allocated. And a very good example is my own county, where people living in Kenya from post-election violence, up to now, they have not been compensated. Finally, Mr. Speaker, issues of land is emotive. It's not only the IDP of 2007 post-election violence. There are so many Kenyans who are actually displaced. Kenyans themselves who are living in their own land today, they are being dispossessed because of the manner in which Ministry of Land is actually handling the land issues. A very good example is Yolo County, where we had a petition and a statement before the Lands Committee. This matter has not been resolved up to now. Today in my own county, the county government is giving letters of allotment without actually subjecting the list of the beneficiaries to the communities to look at it and see whether they are affected or not. I think matters of land needs to be handled with a lot of seriousness that it deserves in this country. I thank you.
Senator Ledama. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I'll be very brief. I rise to support the three petitions, and I'd like to request the committee that will be tasked with petition number 3, that has to do with the blasting of dams, to extend their work to the blasting of, or the source of materials for the construction of the SGR railway. Mr. Speaker, sir, there are so many people who were admitted in hospitals. They paid serious bills. Some of them have permanent damages to their health. When the SGR was being constructed, particularly in Narok County, in a place called Sia Bay, where children, orphans, an orphanage, where children live there in the mercy of other people, yet they were allowed to continue blasting and getting the material. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of NEMA. NEMA is devolved, you know, and I think county governments are now failing in ensuring that NEMA carries out their function. And it behooves us as members of this House who represent counties to ensure that we push NEMA to guarantee a good environment for our citizens. Number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, on this issue of IDPs. I'm a firm believer that before someone becomes an IDP, they have a home. So the government ought to ensure that those people who were evicted from their homes, their original homes, due to the issue of political instability in the country, are facilitated to be able to be returned back to their home. And finally, Mr. Speaker, on this issue of pension, it is evil for people to spend money, which is money that has been contributed by civil servants, by Kenyans, people who are working. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, because I see the time is up, I'd like to propose that the committee comes up with serious recommendations for setting up
Your time is up.
various civil and criminal.
Your time is up, Senator Ladama. What's your point of intervention, Senator?
Mr. Speaker, although the Honorable Senator has left the floor, but it will be wrong for it to be on record because he stated that NEMA is devolved. It is not. If you look at fourth schedule, NEMA and the protection of environment is under the national government, and it's item number 22. So it better. They only have field offices, but it's not devolved. It will be wrong for it to be on record that NEMA is devolved.
It's true. That's the position. You can read it later, Senator Ledama. We don't have a lot of time. You are off. You are off the mic. Are you reading a different document?
We have engaged NEMA, and NEMA themselves have devolved their services. Okay? So if
they have decentralized, Senator Ledama. Finally, Senator Wambua.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to comment on this statement. The petitions, I will be very brief, but I must inform my friend, Senator Fonaro, that there's a difference between centralization and devolution.
Consult in Lawton's
Honorable Senator. Mr. Speaker, on the matter of the petition that you read from residents of Makueni, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that this is a very unfortunate situation. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, because the reason why people in this country petition this House is because they expect that their matters will be processed and they will get results. It's the same reason why members here bring statements to the floor. Mr. Speaker, the matter of pollution arising from blasting in construction sites across this country has been a thorn in the flesh of communities neighboring capital projects. In Kitui, along the Kibwezi Kitui Road, there have been several cases which have been brought to the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, given to the Committee on Roads and Transportation, where I sit. The Speaker, to date, those people are awaiting results. The Speaker, I was going to be standing to comment on this matter and say, going forward, Mr. Speaker, I will urge the Chair, the Speaker of the Senate, to ensure that the Speaker directions that are given on statements, on petitions, on motions, the Speaker, they are implemented to the letter, because this is the only way that we are going to heighten public confidence in the Senate, so that we are not just seen as a talking house. We are a house of record. We are a serious house, Mr. Speaker, for legislation and representation. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Bomet, what is your... You know, not everybody can... we have really overshot our time. I'll give you an opportunity during statements which are just coming. Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment, and Natural Resources. So in terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. On the petition on railway staff, Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. In terms of Standing Order 232, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. And finally, climate change. Nyandarua. Is it Nyandarua? Okay, Honorable Senator, pursuant to Standing Order 2321, the petition should be committed to the relevant standing committee for its consideration. In this case, I direct that the petition be committed to the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations. In terms of Standing Order 2322, the committee is required in not more than 60 calendar days from the time of reading the prayer to respond to the petitioner by way of a report addressed to the petitioner and laid on the table of the Senate. I thank you. We're going to have a report by Chairman J-Lag, Senator Omogeni. Where is he? And like I directed, we shall have a sitting on Thursday at 10 a.m. Yeah. 10 a.m. in the morning. Senator Omogeni. Okay, next order. Okay, yeah. Next order. Okay.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of majority.
Thank you. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Tuesday, 21st July 2020. First one is the county government's budget implementation review report for the first 9 months of the financial year 2019-2020. And the second is the crops, sugar imports, exports, and byproducts regulations 2020. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, since he is coming from the other chamber, I will allow you to present your petition, your report. Just present one, the other one you can present next week.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, 21st July 2020, report on consideration of the petition by Julius Masiva Obuga regarding amendment of the Constitution to delete the cockerel holding an axe in the coat of arms and the public seal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
Senator Alice Milgo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to give a statement on continued learning and reopening of learning institutions following closure occasioned by outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you are aware, the outbreak of coronavirus, COVID-19, resulted in global shutdown of educational institutions with the intention to protect children from being infected and reduce the spread in general. In Kenya, learning in all educational institutions was suspended on 15 March, and an estimated 15 million learners were sent home for an unspecified period of time. Mr. Speaker, sir, these measures were put in place to slow the spread of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, and there is some evidence that school closures led to declines in the epidemic rates of COVID-19 in some parts of the world. And nonetheless, Mr. Speaker, sir, the school closure also changed how students are educated. Different countries formulated a raft of measures and allocated resources to help learners, teachers, and parents facilitate continued learning during this crisis. In our country, Ministry of Education announced that it had designed online learning programs and would use multiple forms of media and digital platforms to deliver materials and novel learning opportunities. However, the disruptions to instructional time in the classroom is already showing signs of severe impacts, and there are concerns that school closure are doing more harm than good. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you are aware, on 7 July 2020, the Ministry of Education announced that due to the uncertain environment in the country, the education stakeholders had resolved to reopen all basic education learning institutions in January 2021. This decision would apply to all learners, and the ministry would enhance remote learning and explore innovative approaches to promote equity. However, teacher training colleges and DVET institutions would be allowed to reopen from September 2020. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the meantime, the delivery of the curriculum and continued learning through virtual and distance learning programs is facing numerous challenges and appears to be poorly designed to cater for all the learners due to their varied needs and abilities. The learning timetable are not accessible, and time allocated is inadequate. There is an equal distribution of subjects, and all lessons are not covered by the virtual and distance learning programs. Mr. Speaker, sir, a recent report by the Directorate of Quality Assurance and Standards in the State Department of Early Learning and Basic Education indicates that majority of parents and guardians are not at the forefront of their children learning at home. While quality of supervision of virtual learning by teachers is low, there is limited or no communication between learners and teachers or schools, and assessment of learners is low. Mr. Speaker, sir, prolonged closure might escalate school dropouts rates and early pregnancies. Available evidence indicates that during economic shocks, many school children, and especially girls, may shift their activities towards purely income-generating activities to support their households. Mr. Speaker, sir, as you are aware, in Kenya, more than 1.6 million school children in marginalized areas and urban poor rely on regular school feeding and nutrition services. With the continued closure, these children could already be nutrient deficient, vulnerable, and at risk. Virtual and distance learning programs are also invariably placing a heavy burden on parents and guardians, with many struggling to support children in their new learning environment, often juggling between supervision, their own work, and house chores. The COVID-19 crisis, therefore, has exposed vast challenges and disparities facing education sector. The net effect of these challenges is that the gap in education and socioeconomic quality will be aggravated, which could affect the learning and life chances of many children in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, while it is critical to suppress the virus, there is need to ensure that there is support for continued learning in the country, and measures must be taken to guarantee continued learning while protecting the learners and teachers. However, Honorable Speaker, some serious concerns have also been raised as to what are the basic principles and conditions that should be met before we restore some form of face-to-face education for all learners. When should school reopen? For which segments of students and teachers, if not everyone? Should schools reopen? What health and safety measures should schools adopt on reopening? Indeed, one of the most critical questions is whether reopening schools will lead to a resurgence of infection among learners, staff, and product community. Mr. Speaker, sir, research evidence indicates that the timing of school reopening should be guided by the best interest of the child and overall public health considerations based on an assessment of the associated benefits and risk and informed by cross-sectoral and context-specific data, including education, public health, and socioeconomic factors. Prior to the opening of the schools, the government are expected to come up with critical policies, procedures, and financing plans needed to improve schooling, with a focus on safe operations, including strengthening remote learning practices. Mr. Speaker, sir, the governments are expected to develop clear and easy to understand and detailed protocols on physical distancing and hygiene measures and policies to protect teaching and non-teaching staff and learners, in addition to identifying response and recovery financing for immediate investments in school water, sanitation, and hygiene. Mr. Speaker, sir, as part of reopening process, governments are expected to adopt proactive approaches to reintegrate marginalized and out-of-school children and focus on remedial education to compensate for the lost instructional time. They should also provide clear guidance to establish procedures to be followed if learners or staff members become unwell, and equip teachers with skills and knowledge to be able to deal with students' mental health and psychosocial needs, address stigmatization and discrimination, and support learners and their families in coping with the continued uncertainties of the pandemic. Mr. Speaker, we are greatly convinced that a return to face-to-face instruction would enhance life chances of our children and reverse any devastating impacts of the recent months. Across the world, learners are going back.
You'll need to summarize, Senator.
Yes, okay. Across the world, the learners are going back to learning institutions that have reopened using a wide range of schools. Mr. Speaker, weighing on the health risk posed by the coronavirus against educational risk, the Education Committee recommends the following. A phased reopening of basic education learning institutions may be beginning from September 2020 to allow a division of classes into smaller groups and allowing each group its own specific room where learners only interact with classmates in their assigned group. Priority should be given to the national examination classes, KCPE and KCSE, so that they can continue with syllabus coverage and prepare for examination. The first lessons for students following reopening should cover similar topics, including epidemic prevention, healthcare maintenance, and how to respond to emergency drills. Prohibition of usual morning meetings and parades, cancellation of all sporting activities and field trips, as well as to be able to adhere to social distance. Frequent cleaning and hand washing practices should, in this case, be observed, and this should be conducted twice a day. All members of staff and learners should always wear a cloth face mask. Desks and other workstations should be spaced at 6 feet each to minimize time spent inside closed-door rooms. The Ministry of Education should outline and circulate standard opening procedures for dealing with potential exposure to coronavirus and ensure that learning institutions are able to manage identified infections or symptoms within the school by providing isolation rooms. The Ministry of Education should mobilize the support and assistance from different government departments and agencies, including the Kenya Defense Forces and National Youth Service, to provide sanitation and water in schools. The Ministry of Education should ensure that there are adequate hand washing facilities basins, running water, and soap in appropriate stations within the school. Ministry of Education should liaise with the Ministry of Health to ensure that all learning institutions access public health personnel as well as expertise to be able to help while school is going on. Ministry of Education should also provide regular and strict internal as well as external monitoring and evaluation that should be reported in as a bi-weekly report to Parliament, to teacher unions, and to National Parents Association. Ministry of Education should provide sufficient resources to resuscitate the digital literacy programs to ensure that all learners have access to updated digital materials and curriculum coherent to facilitate effective delivery of distance learning.
You have overshot your time, so conclude.
Yes. I'm concluding in a short while, Mr. Speaker. Only one point.
And welcome to our daily COVID-19 update in the country. Fellow Kenyans, let me begin today by talking about proper care for older persons in the community. As you are aware, this segment of our population of persons who are 60 years and over and who number about 2.6 million are a high-risk group in terms of their susceptibility to COVID-19. Nutrition deserves special attention because as people reach older age, the correct diet is essential for their good health, more so than at younger ages. Healthy aging is associated with physiological, cognitive, social, and lifestyle changes that influence dietary intakes and nutritional status. As we ramp up our COVID-19 mitigation measures, I urge our healthcare workers to give top priority to older persons in our health facilities. They need to ask them about existing conditions they may have, verify last visit details and their medication that they are on. At this time, when we are fighting COVID-19, this cohort may not get the necessary geriatric attention from caregivers or even have proper access to optimal nutrition. Often, this cohort will be stressed, anxious, and fearful of leaving their households. In the normal aging process, inevitable and irreversible physical changes occur, such as poor food intake, reduced nutrient reserve, reduced appetite, changes in taste and smell, and difficulty in swallowing. In a developing country like Kenya, where high mass consumption indices have not been attained, the price of foods rich in micronutrients is discouraged because of the price factor. Older people have increased morbidity and mortality. Other significant age-related changes include the loss of cognitive function and deteriorating vision, all of which hinder good health and dietary habits in old age. Fellow Kenyans, due to the physiological changes of aging, decreased immune function, and comorbidities such as hypertension and diabetes, older persons are at significantly increased risk for COVID-19. Older adults are more susceptible to the infection itself and are more likely to progress to the severe and critical stages of the disease. In this cohort, many of the diseases they suffer from are due to dietary factors, some of which may have existed since infancy. These factors are then compounded by changes that occur naturally with the aging process. Daily optimal nutrition and physical activity is essential for all to stay healthy and live long. I urge health practitioners, educators, and caregivers to provide sound advice and support older people and their families in maintaining healthy lifestyles. Healthy eating in older persons builds immunity, prevents disease, and maintains good health. Older persons should therefore be supported to consume a variety of foods from different food groups. For example, such as staples, this is the maize, millet, sorghum, roots, and tubers. Legumes, such as lentils, cowpeas, pigeon peas, soya. And nuts and edible seeds, together with a moderate consumption of animal source foods. Vegetable and fruits are important sources of vitamins, minerals, dietary fiber, plant protein, and antioxidants, and should be consumed in plenty on a daily basis. Fellow Kenyans, turning to our COVID-19 situation in the country today, we record 397 people who have tested positive after testing 3,637 samples over the past 24 hours. This now brings to 14,168 the number of confirmed positive cases in the country, and brings our cumulative samples tested to 249,998. From the 397 cases that we are reporting today, 389 are Kenyans and 8 are foreigners. Males comprise 236 and females 161. Again, the youngest is a 1-year-old infant. The oldest is 90 years. The new cases are distributed in the following counties in order of the numbers. Nairobi, 239 cases. Kiambu, 33. Machakos, 27. Nyeri, 17. Busia, 16. Nakuru, 12. Mombasa, 12. Kajiado, 10. Migori, 8. Uasin Gishu, 8. Kericho, 5. Narok, 3. Laikipia, 3. Kisii, Kisumu, Lamu, and Nyandarua, 1 each. If we look at the sub-counties for the 3 counties with the largest numbers, Nairobi with its 239 cases, these cases are within the following sub-counties: Westlands 22, Langata 21, Makadara 21, Embakasi 19, Dagoretti North 18, Embakasi West 18, Kasarani 15, Embakasi South 14, Roysambu 13, Kibra 12, Starehe 12, Dagoretti South 10, Embakasi Central 10, Kamkunji 10, Embakasi North 9, Ruaraka 9, and Mathare 7. Kiambu's 33 cases are from Kiambu Town 8, Kiamba 7, Kabete 4, Kikuyu 4, Ruiru 4, Juja 2, Limuru 2, Gatundu South, and Lari 1 case each. Machakos, which is third with 27 cases, which come from Athi River 24, Machakos, Kathiani, and Mwala 1 case each. The rest of the county breakdown is given within the document, which you shall receive. Today, I'm also happy to inform you that 642 patients have recovered, of which 587 are from the home-based care program, and 55 have been discharged from various hospitals. This brings the total number of recoveries so far to 6,258. And I want to take this opportunity once more to thank our healthcare workers for the good job that they're doing out there in the front line. However, at the same time, I'm sad to inform you that today we have lost a record of 12 patients to the disease. And this brings our fatality rate to 250 at this point. I want to pass our condolences to the family and friends of all those who have lost their loved ones. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Purity Mose from KBC. Two concerns. One, how many counties have achieved the 300 isolation bed capacity as required so far? And number two, we've seen some media personalities coming out and sharing their status that they are positive. But now, my question is, we've not been able to see any target testing to those places. When do you intend to conduct the target testing to those areas and other areas where positive cases have been recorded but still no target testing that has been embarked on? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Graham Kajila from The Standard. My question is with regards to, yesterday you've spoken about stigma a lot. And my question is how these cases are being handled, especially in private hospitals. We've seen a directive from Mandera County, for example, that COVID-19 patients should not be handled in private facilities. We've seen the way Shalom Hospital was handled due to COVID-19 infections, as well as Pumwani. I would like to ask, do you think the way the government is handling these issues is contributing to stigma? And isn't there a way, another better way that these issues could be handled instead of, because most patients actually, they'll get themselves in private facilities before they get to government facilities. Is there a better way that this issue could be handled? If actually we have all the preventive equipment, how other way can we handle that issue?
My name is Anita from NTV. I just have several questions. The first one being that it seems that men continue to be the highest number of cases that we keep seeing from the statistics. And my question is, what is it about men that is making them susceptible to the virus? The second one is that there's a document that seems to be circulating, titled, and it's written that it's coming from the public, from the Ministry of Health, stating that it has certain conditions about alcohol consumption in the country. For example, it states that people can't consume alcohol in public places such as parks. My question is it true? Is it coming from the Ministry of Health? And third and lastly is that Oxford University stated that, or say that they have come up with a vaccine. They've had a breakthrough. My question is, are you in talks with them that possibly could come here and we could also get to experience those trials, as well as in Kenya itself, KEMRI and all those other organizations? How far are we when it comes to vaccines? Is there a trial that's coming up? Are there any participants that have been selected? I'd just like to know how far we are with all of that.
Okay, thank you. The counties, as you know very well, that His Excellency the President has called for a meeting with the governors. I think it is happening on Friday. And the purpose of that meeting is again to be updated, for all of us to be updated and be informed about the level of preparedness within the counties in terms of meeting the target that was set by His Excellency the President of attaining 300 beds in every county. And as a ministry, we have been working very closely with the counties. We are continuing to work with them, and we are also monitoring and assessing and supporting their efforts to attain this target and to, in general, improve their level of preparedness. We will for certain know by Friday, after the Friday meeting, what the levels of preparedness of the counties are. But from where we are, we know that every effort is being put in meeting their targets, and we suspect that a very large number of counties will meet the target come that date they have with the President. So let's wait for the outcome of that meeting to be informed where we stand on that. Media personalities, as I've read also in the paper, and I would want to say that I think it's a positive thing when people in high office or who are celebrities or in media come out and pronounce their status. That is one way to destigmatize the disease. If you remember with HIV, it was the same thing. But of course, when we talk about COVID, it is not anywhere near HIV in terms of the reasons why it was stigmatized. So we need to encourage that when people do come out and state their case. It helps us to be able to destigmatize the disease, to recognize that this is a disease that can affect anyone, and it is a disease that if we handle it well and get it at the right time, that most of the people will recover from this disease. Targeted testing. I think when we say we are doing 3,000, today we said we did over 3,000. Let me see exactly how many we tested today. 36, 37. That is a large number of tests. And I believe and I'm certain that quite a number of these tests is still targeted testing, going to certain places to look at particular spots. So we have not, in a sense, stopped any of this targeted testing. I think we're doing it. We may not be doing it at a scale that we had done it in some points in the past. But targeted testing is still going on, as well as testing of contacts and contact tracing. That's happening. And so I would not entirely say that we are not doing targeted testing, unless by targeted testing you mean something else in terms of what your expectations would be.
Just a clarification,
Yeah.
Because some of them came out even last week to announce their status that they are positive, but we haven't seen any target testing in any of the media houses, despite reporting cases weeks ago. Maybe when do you plan to do target testing in media houses that have reported cases?
Oh, you mean in media houses?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I didn't get that. You mean the media houses have made a request for the ministry to come and test people in those media houses? That's what you're saying, correct?
My concern is it supposed to be a request once a place like a media house reports one or two cases? Is it supposed to be a request, or it's automatic that the ministry is supposed to do target testing in that particular area?
That's not called targeted testing.
Okay.
That is called contact tracing.
All right.
And that happens. That is part of the protocol, that once somebody is found to be positive within a particular work environment or any other environment, then that person contacts must be traced. So contact tracing is part of the protocol. It happens. But beyond that, what might happen is that, for example, in an institution, if such a situation arises, the institution may then wish to do a broader test of people within that institution on that building. And I think that is what I was driving at, whether that request was made. And that usually can happen. And the ministry responds to such a request and will send a team to do much broader testing. But the contact tracing is part of the protocol and procedure, and it happens because it's important to do that in order to be able to contain that virus within that environment at that particular time when a positive case is discovered. Graham, stigma, I think I spoke about stigma. But the practice and what we are seeing out there, whether it is contributing to stigmatizing the disease, from where we stand as a ministry and the advice and direction we provide, this is any other disease. We would not want this disease to be stigmatized, and we would want to fight any moves that will lead to stigmatization of this disease. However, we are aware, and perhaps as a natural reaction of not being very familiar with the disease, some institutions may fear even taking in patients who are COVID. When that happens, then of course that leads to some level of stigmatization. And we want to say here that institutions first must be prepared for the reality that we have community transmission of COVID-19, which means that we will get people who will present with symptoms of COVID-19 in our facilities. And we should treat them just like we would treat any other person who comes in with symptoms for another disease. But preparedness means that the institution must have set itself up so that it can deal with handling of COVID-19 because of its infectious nature. So we should not have institutions exclusively turn away people who show signs of that are consistent with COVID-19. I think that is not proper, and that is stigmatizing the disease, which is something that we do not want to happen. It only ends up hampering the efforts of the COVID response. Men versus women. Why more men, less women? I mean, there can be very many theories to try to explain that. And there are also scientific studies that are being undertaken to try to understand that. At this point in time, I think we have no clear answer why more men are affected than women. The course of the disease is generally the same in both sexes. So I think that is an open question that will be answered in time once some of this research sheds light on the factors. There have been theories about, for example, the number of receptors in certain organs in men, that they have a higher density of the ACE receptor, which is what the virus uses to invade cells, that there are higher densities of these receptors in certain cell types in men and so on. But that remains to be proven to be, to associate that directly with the increased infection in men. So let's wait and see what research will reveal. Dr. Kuria will respond on the document that you talked about, which on alcohol utilization. With respect to vaccines, yes, there's tremendous effort out there. There are more than at least 200 vaccines that are being tested out there. Some of them have progressed to higher levels of testing. In the process of testing or clinical trials, there are several stages. There's what's called phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of a trial. These phases address different things. The first phase and the most important part of that is really to determine the safety of a product. That's usually the first thing that you want to do, is to test safety. So most phase 1 trials will test safety of the product. What does this product do? Does it cause any other adverse reactions in the subject? There may be some level of dosing. It requires a smaller number of people. You move on to phase 2 now, which still focuses on safety, but might begin to look at what is called efficacy, which is how effective is the product. And then you go to, once you get through that, you go to phase 3, which is a larger number of people, and there you are generally focusing on the efficacy of the product. Does it do what it was intended to do? So we do have, I think, a couple of vaccines, especially in the US and I think in the UK as well, that have gone through some of these phases and are now entering the large-scale phase. That's promising, because if a vaccine has proceeded to that stage, it means it has passed these other tests. I heard that there is a vaccine in the US that's now entering phase 3. We know that there is a vaccine in the UK that is also progressing well. So the entire world is looking to a successful vaccine that comes out in good time and that will be able to protect people from getting COVID-19. The chances are that we may get a number of products that will then have to be applied. I can see that there are many countries that have already placed huge orders for these vaccines. I was watching Citizen actually was informing me yesterday about what's happening in some of these countries. Now you know that just like we told you about our testing limitations with testing, the limitations of getting the equipment and getting the reagents because of the global supply chain and the demands, and the preferences. You know, the more developed, richer worlds where these products are produced are the ones to benefit first, and we end up in the end of the queue. That is also something that, of course, is of concern with respect to any vaccine that might come out. And there are discussions at many levels, at regional and intercontinental levels, to make sure that low and middle income countries are not left out in terms of getting this vaccine. And I know there is quite a bit of activity there. We have our regional bodies, our continental bodies that are working to strike deals so that even a low middle income country should still be able to get those vaccines once they become available. I think there is intense diplomatic effort going on to see that there is that certain level of equity in terms of the distribution of these vaccines once they come out. And we hope that low and middle income countries, our country included, that we will be among those who will be able to get some doses of those vaccines when they are ready to be used. I think I have responded to the questions that I was asked. I have asked Dr. Kuria to respond on the specific one regarding the document you mentioned that you saw circulating in social media. Dr. Kuria.
Thank you very much, Kash Rashid. I think the document you referred to is a draft document that is circulating on social media. That it's a draft legal notice. It's a notice that has no number. So we will not talk about a legal notice that has no legal notice number. It's a draft. It should be under the office of the AG. And once it gets a number, it becomes a legal notice, and we can talk about its contents. But I know it is circulating, and maybe somewhere in the offices for comments from the technical officers who address the contents of the legal notice. But by and large, if it is there, it should be aiming to address the issues of alcohol consumption that were addressed in the Presidential Directive of 6th July that we talked about yesterday. That the sale of bars remain closed and the sale of alcohol is limited to takeaway only. I guess that is what the document is trying to address. Once it becomes a legal document, then we can discuss it further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anoxicaulia, can we leave it for tomorrow, please? Huh? I'll take only your question.
Thank you so much, sir. Anoxicaulia from Citizen TV. Yes, we talked about the prevalence in men, but there is also the fatality. Say that more men are more susceptible to the disease. But there's some theories that came out. I don't know how true they are. First of all, about the concentration of an enzyme called SCE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 that is more concentrated in men. Does it have anything to do with why we are seeing more men succumb to the disease or not? And does it make the men more susceptible? Another question that I just wanted to ask is about, we have seen quite a number, not many, but people who just, for example, they start feeling or having symptoms, then they collapse and die. What is really happening to them? Is there an explanation to it, that someone today shows symptoms and in the morning, or even when they are being rushed, they just simply collapse and die? Is there something that is probably was happening even before the symptoms manifested themselves?
Enoch, you're becoming a scientist. Enroll for a PhD. I will be very happy to supervise you. But as I was responding to the issue about male versus females, I said that one of the theories is the expression of this particular molecule called ACE, which is a receptor. It is the receptor. It means that the virus docks on it and enters the cell. Yes, there have been theories that perhaps it could be that, but there are many other theories, so we're really not clear. And as I said, as the science around this pandemic develops, we will know in time, including your other question regarding why is it that some people, the disease just progresses so fast to the point of death in a very short time. And that has been reported in many places. Yes, there are people who, once they get it, the symptoms, they show the symptoms, and very, very rapidly progress to a stage where a very critical stage and may even die. These are some of the unknowns about this disease that we hope in time will be unraveled. But again, we also have to understand that maybe there could be certain, because we have to understand these individuals, why did they progress so fast? Could it be that they may have had certain underlying factors? What is the influence and the weight of these underlying factors? Because right now we know about the comorbidities and others. It could be possible that there could be other more underlying factors that have not been understood yet, including the weights of these comorbidities, their combinations that could result in something like this. So I think there's a lot we are going to learn as we move through this pandemic. Thank you.
And some of them have just sat on the monies, and they are not using the monies to do what was supposed to be done. While we congratulate the governors who have done something, there are some who should be on the list of shame, and those should be brought to our attention so that we know who is not using the money which has been given to all counties. Above all, Madam Speaker, it's all about understanding the disease and what you can do. And the simple instructions that are given, those are our duties should be to help our people understand and accept. I know in the rural areas, Madam Speaker, some people take it for granted that once we have no case, because we have not announced any case from, say, West Pokot, which is still clear, no case. That doesn't mean the county should go to sleep. It means that they should be prepared in case. Now that the country has been opened, we should not, there are a lot of people traveling from Nairobi, from other areas, and very soon you'll start having those cases So if you're not prepared, you won't be able to help. So I support and I hope that the committee will take concern.
Senator Faki.
Asante Bispika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuchangia taarifa iliyoletwa bungeni na Senator Khaniri, Senator wa Vihiga. Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kweli kwamba maradhi ya corona yameingia katika nchi yetu na kwa sasa visa vingi vinaripotiwa kuhusiana na maradhi haya. Hivi asubuhi Mheshimiwa Spika, niliweza kuzuru hospitali ya Aga Khan na ripoti niliyopewa pale ni kwamba vyumba vyao vya ICU vilikuwa vimejaa wagonjwa. Na wale ambao hawakuweza kupata nafasi kule waliweka katika ile wanaita high dependence unit ambao pia wanachukua wanahitajia vifaa vya kupumua na vingine.
Sorry, Senator Mwaura, kindly approach the chair.
Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la kusikitisha ni kwamba katika kaunti zetu nyingi hazijakuwa na uwezo wa kuwa na vitanda vya ICU. Labda zilizoweza kupata nafikiri sasa ni kama kaunti zisipungua 7 ama 8. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, hatari iliyoko ni kwamba wengi wa wale wagonjwa itabidi waje Nairobi ili waweze kupata matibabu ya ICU kama hayo. Kwa hivyo ni muhimu Mheshimiwa Spika kwamba kaunti zetu zijitayarishe na vitanda kama hivyo, kwa sababu tunavyoona visa vikiongezeka na watu wengi wanaondoka katika mji wa Nairobi, mji wa Mombasa kwenda sehemu za mashambani, na maana kwamba baadhi yao wanachukua ugonjwa na kupeleka sehemu zile za mashambani. Kwa hivyo ni hatari ambayo itakumba nchi iwapo vitanda kama hivi havitakuwa katika sehemu nyingi za kaunti zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, tumeona pia vile vile kwamba watu sasa wameweza kupumua au wameweza kurelax, nikitumia lugha ya Kiingereza, katika kupambana na janga hili la corona. Utaona kwamba watu wengi mjini wanatembea bila barakoa, watu wengi hawaoshi mikono mara kwa mara, hawatumii sanitizer, na zote hizi ni vitu ambavyo vilikuwa vinahubiriwa kwa muda mrefu kabla ya kurelax hizi haya masharti. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, ipo haja ya watu kurejelea tena katika uhubiri wa haya masharti ili kila mtu aweze kujua kwamba ugonjwa bado uko. Ni labda nafasi tu imetolewa, lakini ugonjwa bado uko, na ugonjwa vile vile ni hatari na umekuwa hatari zaidi, kwa sababu kwa sasa wale ambao wameathirika na wakaondoka ulimwenguni hawakuchukua muda wa siku 3 ama siku 4. Kwa siku 2 au 3 wameweza kupoteza maisha. Asante
Senator time. Okay, that's fine. Finally, Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also wish to thank Senator Khaniri for bringing this matter to the House. Madam Speaker, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this country in terms of how we prepare, in terms of how we prevent, in terms of how people are informed, in terms of the way forward, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, right now we are being told, even our Director of Medical has just confirmed that there are interesting development in Oxford University in terms of the development of vaccine. Once that mass testing is done and this appears to be helping, then are we waiting until that time, or we start engaging now so that we collaborate in terms of that vaccine, or in terms of even having availability? Imagine a country like America with that big population. If their population is being affected that much, they'll be the first ones to order. What are we doing about it? Shouldn't we be proactive in terms of ensuring that we are next in the line once we are convinced that that vaccine works, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, let's be real. The COVID-19 is affecting livelihoods, Madam Speaker, of our people. Madam Speaker, it is killing people who are, who are active in terms of labor to ensure that food production and security of our livelihood is now not being taken care of properly. Madam Speaker, in terms of the teachers, Madam Speaker, it was so heartbreaking to see a teacher who didn't pay his rent for 3 months, who has been locked by the landlord. Madam Speaker, all of us went through teachers, Madam Speaker. And I think it's high time that government takes at least the teachers who teach private school some money so that they can also
Senator,
be taken.
wind up,
so that they can be taken care of, so that we don't see. Madam Speaker, even there's other impacts, like there are some people who are even they are allergic to sanitizers, for example, as well, and they are really suffering in terms of getting reactions and even looking for medication as a result of the reaction from the sanitizers, Madam Speaker. So our people need to take care.
Senator, time up. Time is up.
Okay, thank you. Just one final word, just to
Honorable Senators, for the sake of time, we still have so many statements and we have only 10 minutes to go. We have to abide by our own standing orders. Senators, we have committed the 3 statements to their respective committees, and giving a timeline of 2 weeks, not about, but of 2 weeks to report back on the statements. The next statement is by Senator Kwamboka, is not in the House. Senator Abshiro Halake.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have 2 statements on the order paper. I don't know if you'll allow me to just present all 2 of them, or...
Just go ahead and read the 2 of them,
okay.
And please try to summarize if possible.
I won't. They're very short.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding the provision of training opportunities for persons in the public service who living with disabilities. In the statement, the committee should state whether persons in the public service living with disabilities are accorded equal opportunity to attend trainings or workshops, especially those that are held outside of their duty stations. State whether this is a policy. There's a policy in place which caters for the welfare of for them, and provides them assistance or aids for the said persons when their trainings and workshops are held outside their duty stations, and provide a report of trainings and workshop opportunities, if any, that have been organized by the Public Service Commission and the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs, in which the said persons have benefited over the last 2 years. And I would also like to see what provisions have been put in place for them to actually be trained remotely or participate remotely in meetings and other opportunities to do so, Madam Speaker. I thank you. Madam Speaker, I have a second statement. This statement has been on the order paper for quite some time now, and it regards automation of land registries and general land records in the country. And this statement has actually been overtaken by events because I think there was a petition to that effect. But for purposes of emphasis on the need for this, I would just read through because it'll take me like 2 minutes. Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources on the status of automation of land registries and general land records in the country. In the statement, the committee should provide a detailed report on the status of automation of all our land registries and general land records by the Ministry of Land and Physical Planning in all our counties, confirm the status of the new Digital Land Information Management System, LIMS, that was expected to be operational in all the 61 land registries countrywide by end of April 2020, bearing in mind that the registries were put in place in February 2017, supplied with computers and connected to the internet to pave way for implementation of digital transactions for land, and state the availability of online services from the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning to Kenyans across all counties, particularly given the prevailing COVID-19 circumstances, especially knowing full well that land is an asset that is used by our communities for different things, including collateral, including certain issues to perhaps liquidate the land as an asset that they can liquidate to take care of different issues and different needs. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mwaruma, please make your statement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 48.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the status of Voi Point Limited, formerly known as Voi Sisal Estates, which is on LR number Voi Town 28683 in Taita Taveta County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, clarify whether the land is agricultural or commercial and state how much has been charged on the title deed. 2, explain whether there has been a request for change of user by Voi Point Limited in accordance with the Physical Planning Act and the physical regulations, and if so, provide evidence of such request. 3, state whether approval was granted for the request by the county government of Taita Taveta and whether the county government involved the public in compliance with Article 118 of the Constitution before giving consent for change of user. Number 4, provide information on the amount of money paid by the Kenya Railways Corporation as compensation to either Voi Sisal Estate, Voi Plantation Limited, or Voi Point Limited, as the case may be, during the construction of Phase 1, that is Mombasa, Nairobi, of the standard gauge railway. 5, provide a detailed identity of the planners and the surveyors involved in the process of subdivision of the land on LR number 28683 and outline the purpose of the subdivision. 6, state who authorized the subdivision of the land, given that the parcel of land is charged to Diamond Trust Bank Limited. And 7, state whether the plight of the residents who live in the Sisal estate and those who were chased out by Voi Sisal estate investors and whose houses were demolished and are currently advocating for their land rights and Mkamenyi Cooperative Society. Madam Speaker, let me just say one thing. We have gone with the Committee of Lands to this Voi Sisal estate, currently known as Voi Point Limited. We promised the residents whose land was taken away by encroachment or through encroachment by Voi Sisal Estate that they'll get back their land. We have not given the feedback to those people, and we had given in 2019 a period of 1 year to respond to them. I think we need to expedite action because people were removed from their land. We even saw graves as evidence that people are living there and they were chucked out. We need to really respond to these issues, which are very pertinent to these people. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator for Mombasa, Senator Mwinyi Haji Faki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 48.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transportation concerning the ongoing reconstruction of the Makupa Causeway, Digo Road, that leads to Jomvu area. In the statement, Madam Speaker, the committee should, 1, state the scope of the works being undertaken on the said road, from Barclays Bank, Digo Road, Mombasa to Total Fuel Station in Jomvu area. Number 2, state whether the roadworks include demolition and reconstruction of the Makupa Causeway. And number 3, state the cost of the said works and indicate the estimated date of completion of the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Mwaura.
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Am I supposed to read my statement as well?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to seek a statement from the ad hoc committee on COVID-19 situation in Kenya regarding persons with disabilities who have benefited from COVID-19 response fund set up by the national government. the number, to seek about the number of. Then I also read the second one. I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Roads and Transport regarding the number of persons with disabilities who have benefited from the Kazi Mtaani program by the national government.
Thank you, Senator. I don't know if Senator Cheriot is in the Cherargei. Oh, Senator, you are not in your usual place, so my eyes may fail to see you. Go ahead and make your statement.
Thank you, Chair. I have two statements. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Energy on the issue of loss of 7 billion penalties paid to investors behind Lake Turkana wind power project. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain why the ministry has paid over 7 billion for penalties to contractors, yet the 4,430 kilometers highway voltage power project from Lake Turkana to Suswa in Narok, which is worth 28.9 billion, has not been completed. Second, state the cost of the project since from June 2018, the government was to pay 1 billion monthly for these delays in connecting the plant to the national grid and the suspect declaration of bankruptcy in the Spanish company, which could be been a well-drawn script to swindle the public funds in penalties for the delays. Third, explain the government has spent billions to pay for rainers as penalties since over 1,000 casual laborers were shipped from China to complete the project after the exit of Spanish company. Fourth, state why the Kenya Electricity Transmission Company, Kentraco, acceded to punitive clauses in the contract that it would pay the penalties if they complete the project before the transmission line is completed. And finally, explain the government has paid the latest 1.6 billion despite the National Assembly recommendations that no payment should be done until special audit is done in all the payments done. Madam Speaker, in my second statement, on the request for statement on the issue of public notice issued by Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, that they will no longer be handling samples of and testing of COVID-19. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 48.1, I rise to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health on the issue of public notice issued by Kenya Medical Research Institute, KEMRI, that they will no longer be handling samples and testing COVID-19. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain why Kenya Medical Research Institute has stopped collecting, handling, and testing of COVID-19 in their headquarters and all their branches in the country. Second, explain the roles of the institutions and the reason why any work-in by members of the public will not be tested of COVID-19 at any KEMRI laboratories in Kenya, thus exposing Kenyans to extortion from the private laboratories. And finally, Madam Speaker, state the actions, if any, that has been taken by the Ministry of Health to ensure accuracy and credibility of the samples being tested in both private and public laboratories to avoid wrong results being given to Kenyans as witnessed in the past few days. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senators. That brings us to the end of the statements. And under Statements 48.1, we commit all the statements to respective committees and give a timeline of 2 weeks for them to bring the concerns or the replies to the statements and the concerns of members of the Senate. Honorable Senators, because of time and under normal circumstances and under our standing orders, it's not a must that we make comments on 48.1. So we go ahead to the next order. Order. Other statement. This one was 51.1A. This is a report of a committee. They are not on my. What's the Chairperson of Sessional Committee on Delegated Legislation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Standing Order 51.1 of the Senate Standing Orders provides that a committee chairperson may make a statement relating to a matter for which the committee is responsible for. In fulfillment of this provision, I wish to make a statement regarding some of the statutory instruments referred to the Sessional Committee on Delegated Legislation. On the 5th and 19th of May 2020, during sittings of the Senate Majority Leader tabled the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020 and the Traffic Driving Schools, Driving Instructors and Driving Licenses Rules 2020 respectively. Honorable Speaker, the Traffic Driving Schools and Driving Instructors and Driving Licenses Rules 2020 were published on 20th of March 2020. The rules seeks to streamline the operations of driving schools and driving instructors with the aim of ensuring competency of drivers on our roads. The regulations set out comprehensive curriculum to be used in the training, testing, and licensing of driving instructors, motorcycle riders, and drivers of different categories of vehicles. At its 18th sitting on 15th of June, the committee scrutinized the rules and resolved to approve the rules pursuant to Standing Order 221-4A. The clerk conveyed the resolution of the committee to the Minister of Interior and Coordination of National Government, the Minister of Transport and Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development and the Public Works, and the National Transport and Safety Authority, NTSA. Honorable Speaker, the committee also scrutinized the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020, published on 22nd of April 2020. The regulations have been long awaited and will replace the Public Procurement and Disposal Regulations 2006. The operationalization of these regulations will enhance procurement processes in the counties as well because the 2006 regulations did not envisage a devolution. The regulations will operationalize various provisions of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2015 and strengthen procurement procedures. Some of the provisions introduced by the regulations include: A, shorter timelines in the procurement procedures that will enhance service delivery to citizens. B, promotion of local industries by ensuring that tender documents targeting multinational agencies contain requirements for inclusion of at least 40% inputs sourced locally and reservation of employment opportunities for Kenyan citizens. C, requirement of payment within 60 days from the date of receipt of the invoices subject to availability of funds to ensure prompt payment of suppliers. D, responsibilities of county governments with respect to public procurement and asset disposal. E, management of procurement contracts. F, disposal of assets. And G, procedures to be followed while using the existing methods of procurement of goods, works, and services, and the inclusion of community participation as a procurement method. The committee held a total of 17 sittings to consider the regulations, including meetings with stakeholders, Council of Governors, Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Law Society of Kenya, the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management, and on the 3rd and 4th of June 2020. The committee also met the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning on the 17th of June 2020. The committee expressed its reservation in a few of the provisions of the regulations which needed to be aligned to the Parent Act and the Statutory Instruments Act 2013. The Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning took note of the committee's concerns and gave an undertaking to remedy the offensive provisions and republish the same in the Kenya Gazette. At its 25th sitting held on 4th of July, the committee resolved to approve the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Regulations 2020. Pursuant to Standing Order 221-4A, the clerk has conveyed the resolution of the committee to the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Planning. Honorable Speaker, this is therefore to bring to the attention of the Senate the approval of the Public Procurement Regulations 2020 and the Traffic Driving Schools, Driving Instructors, and Driving Licenses Rules 2020. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the various ministries, departments, and institutions that have continued to support the committee while discharging its mandate. We shall continue to give our regular updates to the Senate on the status of the various instruments that are pending before the committee. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Kilonzo Jr.
Just on a point of order, the statement read by my good friend Senator Faki is actually a very important statement, but based on regulations that are also very critical. What I was wondering, maybe I missed one session, and maybe the chair can clarify. Wouldn't it have been better, Madam Speaker, to actually get a committee report on those regulations? We in this House actually made a lot of effort in doing amendments on the Public Audit Act, Public Audit and Disposal Act. The statement is good, Madam Speaker, but we are then left short-handed in terms of information. Can the committee chair clarify whether there's a report available which can be circulated in the normal manner to senators on these regulations? Because I participated in some of the things about blacklisting contractors, and I would greatly benefit from seeing how the committee has handled the regulations with respect of blacklisting people, cowboy contractors, who continue violating the law on public procurement. Thank you.
Senator Faki, can you react to the concerns of Senator Mutula Jr.?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Under the Statutory Instruments Act, where the committee resolves to approve the regulations, we don't need to make a statement to the Senate. It is only where we are rejecting that we make a statement to the Senate, and that particular statement will be voted for by the Senate in order to be approved or to be rejected. So under the Statutory Instruments Act, we are not obliged to make a statement unless they require us to make a statement. The Senate obliges us to make a statement.
Senator Mutula, are you satisfied with that response?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The committee, and Senator Faki and I sat in the Committee of Legal Affairs when we were discussing the COVID rules. We were actually supposed to come up with a report under the same statutory instruments. Although even in whether you reject or not, I was just asking whether wouldn't it be plausible for the committee to consider, irrespective of what the statutory instruments says, this is a matter so important to all of us as senators on public audit that the committee tables a report of some sort, that they agreed with the regulations in some form, because the report of the committee would not only tackle regulation by regulation, it would help us in terms of information on how they have made sure that the Public Audit and Disposal Act is now being implemented through those regulations. I appreciate the portion where the law does not require a report. What I am asking for is whether the Speaker can find it necessary to direct the committee to prepare a report, whether it's a report on the regulations themselves, because we have not had sight of them, because it's a very important statement, but it will just slide away without any input from us or any reading. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the request by the Senator Mutula is very fair. We are in this House to educate ourselves and to get as much information as possible, and it is in the interest of all of us and the people that we represent. Information is very critical. So, Mr. Speaker, the chair of the Delegated Committee, is it possible that you provide such information, because it is in the interest of all of us that we got more information?
Madam Speaker, if you look at Standing Order number 2214, if the committee accedes to the statutory instrument, the clerk shall convey the message to the relevant authority. If the committee does not accede, the committee may recommend annulment of the instrument to the Senate. If the committee fails to agree, the instrument shall stand approved. Madam Speaker, I'm entirely in the hands of the Senate, the House, that if you guide us to make a statement, we shall make a formal report to the Senate in regard to these particular regulations. But our own standing orders say that if we annul, it's only when we annul that we are supposed to make a statement to the House. If we accede to the regulations, we just make the clerk conveys the information to the relevant ministry, and that will be the end of the matter. Thank you.
Senator, I think we can refer ourselves to Standing Order number 51, 1B, where it at least once in every 3 months, it is required that you give, the committee is required to give a report, and maybe you make it more detailed so that it satisfies the needs of other members of this House. Next order. Okay, thank you, Senator. Where is the leader of majority? We don't have anybody who can be delegated that responsibility, so we move on to the next order. For the next week. Do you have the information? But you're not a member of the SBC? So you can't. You don't qualify, Senator, to... Yes, Minority Leader. Minority Whip.
Under the standing orders, in the absence of the majority leader and any member designated in the majority side, the minority and a member of SBC, if I read the standing orders correctly, can make that statement, so that we don't have to wait. And particularly because... Madam
Senator, you can go ahead and make it. I hope you have the information with...
No, I don't. Oh, the majority leader is here, after all. Just on time. He was just waiting. Thank you.
Majority Leader, you are just on time. You are almost passing...
and I was holding your brief.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'm sorry. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 52.1, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the House for Tuesday, 28th July 2020. On Tuesday, 28th July 2020, the Senate Business Committee will meet to schedule the business of the Senate. On that day, 28th July 2020, the Senate will consider bills scheduled for second reading, and those at the committee stage of the whole, at the committee of the whole stages. The Senate will also continue with the consideration of business that will not be included in today's order paper, in addition to motions, petitions, and statements. Madam Speaker, I had mentioned in my statement last week, bills that are due for second reading are 19, while another 20 bills are at the committee of the whole stage, including those in the order paper for today. The Senate Business Committee will prioritize these bills accordingly. In respect, I continue to urge the relevant standing committees to use the available opportunities on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and even Fridays, and various electronic virtual means of holding committee meetings to expeditiously conclude consideration of these bills and table reports pursuant to the standing orders. Individual senators who may have amendments to bills are encouraged to file the same in good time to allow the Senate Business Committee to schedule the bills. Madam Speaker, before I conclude, I also wish to draw the attention of the House to 57 petitions pending before respective standing committees. I urge the standing committees to expeditiously conclude with the petitions and to table reports pursuant to Standing Orders 2232-2. Madam Speaker, I thank you, and I here lay the statement on the table of the House. Thank you.
Senator Wetangula.
I'm happy that the Majority Leader has mentioned the issue of pending petitions. Madam Speaker, Kenyans have a lot of faith in this House. That's why every single sitting day we have 3-4 petitions. But every time petitions come here, Madam Speaker, the chair commits them to committees, and that's virtually the end of the matter. I want to urge the Majority Leader and the leadership of the House, particularly the Procedure and Rules Committee, to amend our standing orders, Madam Speaker, so that, one, we bring back the implementation committee that can deal with the resolutions of the House and committees. We had that committee, it was mysteriously scrapped, and this House has no implementation mechanism of following up our resolutions and committee resolutions. Number two, Madam Speaker, every time the petitions are committed to committees, and our standing order is to bring back the outcome within 60 days. No committee ever meets that. We have petitions that have been pending before committees for up to a year. And this is going to demoralize wananchi and people who have faith in this House. Comparatively, Madam Speaker, when you look at the number of petitions that go to our counterpart House, there are a lot fewer than petitions that come here. So I want to urge the Chair and the leadership, one, to find a better mechanism within our standing orders on how to process petitions and bring back results, and two, an implementation mechanism not only on petitions, but all other resolutions of this House.
Senator Kilonzo Jr., you have
I want to agree with those sentiments. I'm also a member of SBC, and I'm similarly warning myself. But, Madam Speaker, I just want to propose to the Majority Leader, because I'm aware, like in the Legal Affairs Committee, we have completed all our petitions. Perhaps it's the Majority Leader should find space somewhere in the order paper where these responses to these petitions are listed until they are completed. So that if you have the petition, for example, on the person who said we should remove the cockerel from the emblem, it's listed, and therefore the chair is obligated to stay here until that report is tabled. Because there's a reason why we have so many petitions, including a very urgent petition filed by the Deputy Speaker about a sale of a building in Eldoret. When that petition takes a year, then the purpose of that petition and what the county government of Uasin Gishu was doing, buying an old ramshackle house for an exorbitant price, is defeated, because they will buy quietly and it will be water under the bridge. We cannot, in some form, and Majority Leader can do so, and maybe the chairs of chair and committees of liaison, it's actually more of liaison committee, even more than SBC. When they meet, they should agree on the format of how committees can sort of finish these matters quickly. And even when the petitions come here, Madam Speaker, they are only tabled. And then the petitioner is given a report. The chair is only required to say something if it is necessary. So there's no reason for those delays. Thank you, Speaker.
Senator Zani, do you have to make a statement on that?
Yes,
a
thank
comment
you.
On that?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you for this statement. And just very quickly on the petitions, I think Senator Kilonzo Jr. has already mentioned that they're time-bound. One of the techniques that some committees use is just having subcommittees, because if you have a committee of about 9 people and you have subcommittees of about 3 people each, you're actually able to fast-track the petition. So maybe we can encourage some of our committees to do that. And then looking at the order paper, we had a motion on 9, which is to help us to use virtual methods. I think that is going to be very critical for us. Why I raise this, Chair, is because of the issues of the bills. If you look at the bills 13 up to 21, we've had these on the order paper for the last subsequent meetings, and maybe we need to find a way to balance. Yes, I know statements also come, and they also have their own priority, but some of these bills also have to do with the current issues that we lose the momentum of if they don't come at a specific time. I know the COVID management bill has already gone through. This is one only example of a bill that is timed to what is happening within the country. So I just urge that we find very ingenious ways of being able to push the agenda. And I think what has been proposed at motion 9 would be something we'd support and find mechanisms for do this. I appreciate that we have a lot of orders on our order paper, a lot of business on the order paper, and I think we are up to the task, and I think we will have it all done very well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Finally, Senator Mwinyi Haji Faki.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wish to echo what Senator Wetangula and Senator Juni have said on the issue of the petitions. And even on statements, Madam Speaker, I made a statement here in the month of May in regard to the shooting of a Kenyan aircraft in Somalia. Up to now, nothing has been done about that statement, Madam Speaker. And according to the IATA regulations, there is supposed to be an interim report within 30 days of the happening of the incident. That report has not been issued, and I understand although it has been signed by the Kenyan government and the investigator, the Somali government has refused to sign that statement up to now, and there's nothing that is going on. Madam Speaker, the danger here is that we are going to lose confidence. The members of the public are going to lose confidence in the Senate's ability to deal with these issues. At the moment, Madam Speaker, the family is in agony. About 5 Kenyans died. None of them has been compensated. The insurance company cannot process the payments because at the moment there is no report of the accident that has been issued. So, Madam Speaker, there is an urgency in terms of the disposal of the business, in terms of the statements and the petitions, so that members of the public continue to have confidence in the Senate as a house that considers their issues promptly and in a manner that satisfies their rights and obligations. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
And finally, Senator Faria.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is almost the 4th week I'm sitting here with a bill that is almost on the top of all the bills, and it's never reached. Madam Speaker, I think we either bring back the session in the morning so that we allocate some time for statement and some time for the bills. People with bills can come in the morning, because if we don't dispense with these bills, Madam Speaker, we have a limited time, and our bills unfortunately have to go to the other house, so they take a lot of time. Madam Speaker, I think we need to find a solution, and one of the solutions, I think, is either statements we do on alternate Tuesdays, or we sit in the morning and people with bills can come in the morning to dispense with their bills, and then in the afternoon we have the usual statements and issues that are pressing for this country. Madam Speaker, we need to find a solution. I thank you, Madam, and SBC needs to tackle this matter as a matter of urgency. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senators, for your concerns. It has been brought to my attention that the Speaker has scheduled a meeting on Thursday with the SBC, where all the issues pertaining to petitions, pending business, and statements will be addressed. So I think we leave that to rest and wait. I will look forward to the resolution of that meeting. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, provision of cemetery, funeral parlors, and crematoria in all counties.
Honorable Senators, we cannot execute that business because of lack of numbers, and we therefore defer it. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, approval of the draft report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate standing orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the Senate and its committees.
Chairperson, Procedure and Rules Committee, Professor Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the motion that pursuant to Standing Orders 252 and 255, the Senate approves the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate Standing Orders to facilitate virtual sittings of the Senate and its committees, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 16th June 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 124(1) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 255 and 257, resolves to amend its standing orders as contained in Appendix 1 of the report, and 2, orders that the amendments of the standing orders as contained in Appendix 1 to the report shall come into effect upon approval. Madam Speaker, Article 124 of the Constitution mandates each House of Parliament to establish committees and make standing orders for the orderly conduct of its proceedings, including the proceedings of its committees. The current Senate standing orders were adopted by the Senate on the 14th June 2017, pursuant to Article 124 of the Constitution of Kenya. 2, the standing orders have subsequently been amended by the Senate on the 14th December 2017 and 9th August 2018, pursuant to Standing Orders 248 and 249 of the Senate Standing Orders. 3, Standing Orders 252 stipulates that the Procedure and Rules Committee may, at any time, propose amendments to the Senate Standing Orders. The Procedure and Rules Committee is expected to make a report to the Senate recommending the standing orders, if any, to be amended. Standing Order 185 of the Senate Standing Orders establishes the Procedure and Rules Committee with the mandate to, among others, proposing and considering proposed and amendments to the Senate Standing Orders. Madam Speaker, the membership of the committee is as follows: Senator Kenneth Lusaka, EGH MP, the Speaker of the Senate. 2, Senator Professor Margaret Kamar, MP, Deputy Speaker of the Senate, as the Vice Chair. 3, Senator Dr. Tumbesi Lelekwe, Senator Rose Nyamunga, Senator Judith Pareno, Senator Dr. Christopher Langat, Senator Beth Wamboi Mugo, Senator Dr. Agnes Zani. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic, parliaments across the world have had to modify their rules of procedure in order to transact business in a safe environment. The Senate Business Committee thus resolved that the Procedure and Rules Committee review the standing orders to provide for the Senate to sit in exceptional circumstances. Madam Speaker, the Senate Business Committee, at its sitting held on Monday, the 18th May 2020, considered a paper on the use of online meeting platforms for the Senate plenary and committee sittings, and resolved that the Procedure and Rules Committee reviews and amends the Senate standing orders to actualize virtual meetings and other alternative arrangements for sittings during the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the Procedure and Rules Committee was mandated to table proposals for amendments of the standing orders to provide for the following: A, online, virtual, or remote meetings for plenary and committee meetings during the COVID-19 pandemic period, and any other time when the senators are not able to physically meet due to a national emergency and catastrophe. B, mechanisms to determine attendance and quorum for the plenary and committee sittings and prescribe the manner of voting during such meetings. C, plenary and committee sittings to be recorded and documented in Answered and posted in the Parliament website for access by the public. D, issues of privileges and immunity of senators during a virtual sitting vis-a-vis the location of Parliament and parliamentary presence. E, etiquette, including dress code and other order in virtual meetings. F, mechanisms for access and admission of witnesses and stakeholders into the online, virtual, or remote committee meetings. And G, finally, mechanisms for access and admission of the media into the online, virtual, or remote plenary and committee sittings. Madam Speaker, according to the World Health Organization, coronavirus COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. COVID-19 spreads primarily through droplets of saliva or discharge from the nose when an infected person coughs or sneezes. Most people infected with COVID-19 will experience mild to moderate respiratory illness and recover without requiring special treatment. Older people and those with underlying medical problems like cardiovascular disease, diabetes, chronic respiratory disease, and cancer are more likely to develop serious illnesses. Madam Speaker, at this time, there are no specific vaccines or treatments for COVID-19. However, there are many ongoing clinical trials evaluating potential treatments. The best way to prevent and slow down transmission is to be well informed about the COVID-19 virus, the disease it causes, and how it spreads. Protect yourself and others from infections by washing your hands with soap, water, or rub frequently using an alcohol-based sanitizer. Maintain social distance, especially from anyone exhibiting flu-like symptoms. Avoid touching your face. Practice respiratory hygiene by coughing and sneezing into a tissue or a flexed elbow and staying at home. The first COVID-19 case was confirmed in Kenya on the 13th March 2020 by the Ministry of Health. The government immediately put in place prudent and necessary measures to curb the spread of the disease, forcing organizations, including Parliament, to evaluate the manner in which it carries out its business. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the Senate continuity plan, one, in a circular dated 13th March 2020, which is Annex 2 of the report, both speakers of the Parliament issued guidelines to all members of Parliament and staff to prevent and, when necessary, contain and mitigate against the spread of the coronavirus, which included suspending all foreign travel and official engagements within the Parliament premises. On 31st March 2020, the Speaker of the Senate issued guidelines regarding Senate plenary and committee sittings during COVID-19 pandemic. See Annex 3 of the report. Some key highlights of the guidelines were that plenary sittings would commence at 2:30 p.m. and end no later than 4:30 p.m. During the plenary sittings, the chamber would sit a maximum of 28 senators only. Immunosuppressed senators and staff whose ages were 58 years and above, and those with chronic illnesses such as hypertension, diabetes, cancer, and HIV were encouraged to work from home. The Speaker's gallery and the public gallery would not be occupied by all persons except the 4 technical staffers facilitating the sitting. And there would be no consultation at the Speaker's chair or at the clerk's table. Mr. Speaker, Senate committees were encouraged to transact as much business as possible remotely to reduce the need for physical meetings. Where it was absolutely necessary to hold a physical sitting of a committee, such sittings would be held only in the Senate chamber or in the mini chamber. Not more than 1 committee sittings would be held in either chamber on any day. The Senate chamber would not be available for committee sittings on the days on which the Senate is scheduled to hold its sittings. Additionally, the media and the public were barred from accessing committee sittings, and committees were encouraged to make use of written submissions or responses from the public. Mr. Speaker, on the 17th April 2020, the Speaker of the Senate issued further guidelines for Senate plenary and committee sittings during the COVID-19 situation. See Annex 3. The guidelines, as with the guidelines issued on the 31st March 2020, were limited in their application to the duration of the COVID-19 situation. The salient features of this were as follows. On a day when a plenary sitting of the Senate was scheduled, a senator who was not among the 28 members formally designated to be present in the chamber would be deemed to have attended and to be present during the sitting if the senator, 1, had come to the presence of Parliament for purposes of sitting, 2, was at the senator's office within the presence of Parliament, and 3, had been recorded and certified by the clerk to be present. B, a senator who was deemed present in terms of paragraph A above would be considered and reckoned to be present for purposes of voting, and their vote would be conveyed through the Senate Majority Leader, Senate Minority Leader, and a senator so designated by them. Mr. Speaker, such guidelines have continued to facilitate smooth operations of the plenary and committee proceedings. However, they have not been without challenges. For instance, at a sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, 5th May 2020, you yourself, Mr. Speaker, Senator Mwaura, rose on a point of order and sought the guidance of the Speaker on the matter of the voting procedure in the Senate, citing the guidelines issued on 17th April 2020 as having been misconstrued as depriving senators of their right to vote. The issues were clarified in a communication issued on Tuesday, 19th May 2020, where it was noted that the guidelines that were issued on the 17th April 2020 were introduced to ensure efficiency in the roll call method and for better time management in the chamber, as well as to ensure that all county delegations have an equal opportunity of voting on matters concerning counties, whether they made it to the list of the county of the 28 senators designated to sit in the chamber or not. This was achieved firstly by construing the team present and voting as used in the Constitution to mean not just the senators sitting in the chamber, but also those others within the designated places in the precincts of Parliament that were deemed to be part of the extended Senate chamber. And secondly, by allowing all the votes once cast by the senators themselves to be communicated at once by the respective leaders during the roll call, instead of each senator in the chamber standing to answer the roll call, and the votes of those outside the chamber being communicated by a different media. Mr. Speaker, further, at a sitting held on 22nd May 2020, a special motion to remove the Deputy Speaker of the Senate from office was moved. It's the first such kind of motion in the history of Kenya. Such a motion can only pass by a resolution supported by the votes of at least 2/3 of its members. This is just one of the matters that has a constitutional threshold of 2/3 majority. Resultantly, in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Speaker issued further guidelines on how to facilitate such a kind of a sitting in line with the tenets of the Constitution. The concept of designating rooms adjacent to the chamber was further refined in this communication. The lounge area in the new wing was designated as an extension of the chamber, noting that only 28 senators can be accommodated in the chamber. Seats were designated for the senators, Senate leadership, and other senators were admitted on a first-come, first-served basis. Senators who missed a seat in the chamber were directed to sit in the newly designated area in the new wing. Mr. Speaker, in addition to this, a senator seated in the extended chamber in the new wing wishing to make a contribution in the debate was required to record his or her name with the clerks. The list of senators wishing to contribute to the debate was handed to the Speaker, who called out the senators to speak. And a senator whose name had been called out to contribute to the debate walked into the chamber, bowed at the bar, and proceeded to make his or her contribution from the dispatch table. Upon conclusion, the senator withdrew from the main chamber and resumed his or her seat in the extended chamber in the new wing. During voting, the senators in the extended chamber walked into the main chamber and cast their vote from the dispatch table in the manner set out in the Standing Order 83.5, and thereafter withdrew from the chamber to their respective seats in the lounge. As such, the disruption to the operations of the Senate brought about by the outbreak and spread of COVID-19 continue to pose unprecedented legal and procedural challenges in conducting virtual plenary and committee sittings, such as procedures for verification of identity of members, voting privileges and immunities of members, verification of quorum or comment during the sitting, and access by media and the public to sittings and proceedings of the plenary and committee sittings, particularly when the plenary and committee sittings are held virtually. Mr. Speaker, these challenges may be adequately addressed through designing virtual platforms and having the rules in place to ensure that the plenary and committee sittings comply with the law and law and practice on each of these areas in a manner that can be documented and verified. Mr. Speaker, sir, the conduct of business in plenary is mainly executed through parliamentary debates, deliberations, and resolutions. Matters requiring the decision of the House are always decided by putting the question from the chair by the Speaker once a motion has been made by a senator. Debates are designated to assist members to reach an informed decision on any subject matter. When the debate ends, the chair normally puts the question and the House proceeds to a division, i.e. the electronic voting that we have always done, to determine which side has the majority votes. On the other hand, the Senate committees enable the House to organize their work in such a way as to perform numerous activities simultaneously and expeditiously. Their roles include finding out the facts of the case, examining witnesses, sifting evidence, and drawing up reasoned conclusions. Their composition and method of the procedure are structured to reflect those which prevail in the houses, making them microcosms and extensions of the House. The proceedings of a committee which meets without a quorum are invalid, and decisions taken are not binding. The Senate standing orders specify the quorum of committees and provide that unless a quorum is achieved within 30 minutes of the appointed time, a meeting of a committee shall stand adjourned. Mr. Speaker, the committees are also expected to facilitate public participation during the lawmaking process through inviting submissions of memoranda, holding a public hearing, consulting relevant stakeholders in a sector, and consulting experts on technical subjects. The above procedures have been defined. Have been defined in traditional parliaments, where physical presence is a must for a decision to be recorded. However, the current COVID-19 pandemic thus presents a new challenge where the business has to be conducted virtually with requirements to meet the threshold as set out in law and parliamentary standing orders. Mr. Speaker, fundamentally, virtual parliaments make use of online tools like video conferencing to permit parliamentarians to participate in proceedings without being physically present, whereas such a model would adhere to the WHO and the Ministry of Health of Kenya guidelines on social distancing. A virtual and hybrid model would enable the application of the guidelines on social distancing. It would present constitutional and legal concerns and deny the House an opportunity to practice crucial traditions and customs that are important to order and decorum in the House proceedings. Mr. Speaker, such practices include, but are not limited to, when a senator is called out to speak, she or he rises in his or her place to speak. There are sitting arrangements in the House where the majority side, where the majority side is on the right side of the speaker and the minority are on the left side of the speaker, whereas the political leadership have seats designated to their side. The sitting position of the speaker and the clerks at the table, bowing at the bar when speakers enter and leave the chamber, tabling documents, significance of the speaker's chair, for instance, application of standing order number 112 and standing order number 113, when crossing the floor of the House and senators remaining seated in their seats, and application of standing order number 114 on senators remaining in their places until the speaker has left the chamber, vacating from the speaker's chair during committees of the whole, drawing of the bar and ringing of the division bell, amongst other traditions and practices. Mr. Speaker, concerns are also likely to be raised about the place of the mess, which is one of the most important symbols in the House, as a symbol of the constitutional authority of the Senate and the Speaker. Without its presence in the chamber, Senate cannot lawfully meet, debate, or pass laws. Although the standing orders of the Senate do not recognize the mess, its significance cannot be gainsaid. The National Assembly standing orders recognize the mess in its standing order number 2A, that provides that the mess of the House embodies the authority of the Speaker and the House, and shall be kept in safe custody by the Sergeant-at-Arms. In a remote or virtual model, the place of the mess would be difficult to define or even place. Mr. Speaker, a hybrid model entails combining the current system as it is and one that allows a senator who is not physically present in the House or a committee meeting to participate remotely through a designated virtual platform. Such a model will enable the Senate to preserve its traditions and practices. Mr. Speaker, the committee is of the view that the hybrid system will therefore be the most ideal, whereas such a model is not perfect. With modifications, it addresses the constitutional and legal concerns that arise with a full virtual or remote model. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move and ask Senator Zani to second.
Thank you very much, Mover. Seconder.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg to second this motion on the approval of the third report of the Procedure and Rules Committee on amendments to the Senate standing orders to facilitate virtual sitting of the Senate and its committees. The motion has been moved by Senator Kamar very aptly, and this is a very interesting area because many parliaments did not foresee that COVID would happen, and yet a balance has to be created to ensure that legislative matters get addressed continuously on a continuous basis. The standing orders that we have, therefore, do not have provision or did not have provision for virtual interaction as we know it. And therefore, the timing for this report, I think, is very, very critical. Mr. Speaker, I'm a member of this committee, and I remember even this meeting was held virtually, and very aptly so. Mr. Speaker, over time, I think we've been able to innovate ourselves in a very comprehensive manner, and we've been able to take the situation that we've been in such a way that we've been able to progress. Mr. Speaker, already quite a number of committees are able to now meet through Zoom. We've been also having a hybrid system of meeting within the Senate, where we've been having the extended chamber. But I think what this report, the third report, really intends to do is to identify those nitty-gritty areas that might move us away from constitutionality and application of rules within the Senate, and address this in a very, very precise way. And this is what this committee sought to do, to ensure, for example, that as we have our online, virtual, and remote meetings at the plenary or in the committee during this particular period, senators will be able to understand exactly how to go about it, looking at the mechanisms to determine attendance and quorum, how to present ourselves, for example, in detailed aspects. A lot of input has been made, for example, about how senators will present themselves, that they will have the camera on them. When it comes to issues like voting, for example, Mr. Speaker, knowing very clearly that we wouldn't want a situation where somebody can vote on behalf of somebody else, or where we might even have the whole system hacked, Mr. Speaker. You can imagine somebody else turning up for that meeting, making themselves look like you, and then they're just talking there like Senator Mwaura, and then later on we come and you say, oh, it wasn't me. You know, it would be completely catastrophic. So how are we able to ensure that the identity is well in place? And many forums have suggested that the person must appear. And sometimes also we have situations where you find somebody has put their photograph. That photograph should not be of them cycling at the park, for example, because it might distract people. Mr. Speaker, I know you've been watching and following up on social media about the various incidences that have happened during video conferencing calls, where we've had members, for example, stand up or take a picture accidentally to an area like the kitchen and expose what they're cooking, etc., etc. So we wanted to ensure that we're able to put all these things into place, mechanism for determining attendance and quorum, how to really organize our plenary and committee sittings. And Mr. Speaker, what we have adapted so far in this Senate is a hybrid system. Not completely virtual, because we have the issues that Senator Kamal raised very well about, for example, where do we put the mess? And I know even in other forums where we've gone virtual, it hasn't been complete virtual. There's an element of hybrid system where we actually have just fewer people, like we've seen for masses and for services, for TV transmissions, where we can actually aptly have the necessary things that are meant to be there. We have the speaker there, but we definitely have fewer people. The issue of recording and how that recording is meant to be done and how it is meant to be done and documented in Hansard, that's very critical, and that needs still to be maintained. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, in many of the meetings and in the propositions that we're making in these standing orders is that we have Hansard reports. We have reference points. We have the same audio recordings. Mr. Speaker, in essence, what we are just diverting and changing a little bit is the fact that we're not able to meet in the physical space, but we can conduct our business as though we are still together. Mr. Speaker, the rules of speaking, the rules of muting, the rules of not everybody speaking at the same time, all these are very critical and have been addressed within these standing orders, for example, so that when somebody is given a chance to speak, that is when they will speak. So that when one person is speaking, maybe another person will not interrupt, so that people can mute and unmute themselves at the right times. The issues of privileges and immunity of the senators during virtual sittings vis-a-vis the location of parliament and parliamentary precincts is also addressed, and this is very important, that once you are in either a full virtual or a hybrid system in a meeting which is considered a plenary of the Senate, that you are still able to have the issues of privilege and immunity in place. And indeed, the precincts are specifically been destined to be the county of Nairobi, which is our main sitting space in Nairobi. But I'm sure also the standing orders will be versatile enough so that even as we move to the counties and within the county mashinani engagements, we'd be able to factor that also into place. And then the etiquette of dress code and order in virtual meetings is very, very key, and I've already mentioned that. Mechanisms for access and admission of witnesses and stakeholders into the meeting, virtual, remote,
Senator
and committee
Zani,
meetings. Yes.
Are you suggesting that in virtual meetings people can dress half formal and half informal?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, I was just about to crack a joke as I went there, because we've seen, for example, incidences of people who are very informal, but they have specific suits that they have made, which are overall suits. So they just put them on and get on to the setup, and then they get out. I think it's about presentation, Mr. Speaker, and indeed, in our case, it is about formality. We already have a dress code that we use when we come to the plenary pressings. That is expected also within the virtual setting. You cannot appear there with a swimming costume, for example, or in a designer suit, or looking casual because of the nature of the work that we do. And likewise, even when it comes to the pictures that you put in the background. So these sort of rules, most of the setups that have already put video conferencing, for example, have already put these very, very specific rules. And we are also coming in very strongly to contextualize them within the session of the Senate. Mechanisms for access and admission of witnesses and stakeholders into the meeting, very, very key. In fact, in the sense of identity, for example, ensuring that the person coming on is able to do what they're expected to do, is coming on at the right time. If they have material, that material has been vetted by the clerk, and this is what the standing orders are prescribed, that the clerk has already vetted the material, and that people are able to share this material virtually on the various forums that they're using. And then mechanisms for access and admission of the media into the online, virtual, or remote plenary, that has also been put into place in the sense that media is allowed, and I think in many of the committees where we have met virtually, we've had media being able to come in there. I think the experiences across the world have really made people just have to be innovative. This report gives in detail, and I will not go into that, the various experiences and benchmarking that this committee has done, just to show what other countries are doing and how Kenya has been able to handle it. So examples, for example, from the United Nations right through to the European Parliament, Brazil, Germany, Spain, Italy, Romania, France, Estonia, Australia, and all these Maldives, Poland, South Africa, Norway, the United States of America. All these have been, in one way or another, been using these practices. And I think by stating it this way, Mr. Speaker, it gives us the confidence that we are on the right track. But more important, not only are we setting the pace for understanding of COVID-19 and its effects, but also really trying to mitigate for these particular factors ourselves. The issue of distancing, social distancing, being able to keep the space, the issue of security and safety, the issue of not infecting others. I think this is what is very, very critical and very, very important, and this is what the various procedures are meant to put into place. So fundamentally, of course, we have the pros and cons of the meeting virtually or through hybrid, and I think I've mentioned a bit of this, the issue of, the practice of standing, for example, to speak, and how that is going to be handled. I think it's just going to be handled by somebody sitting just respectfully and being able to just, face their camera and say what they need to be able to say. The issue of, for example, security and logistical concern, threats of hacking, all these have to really be minimized, and the report advocates that this should be. In fact, Mr. Speaker, now people are moving into forums where we can have access to round-the-clock technical support, where we can be able to ensure that the proceeding is safe, it can be conducted well, and it can be conducted in such a way that people can understand what is happening. Mr. Speaker, the hybrid system that we have used, even though initially seemed a bit complicated, we had the speaker sometimes calling somebody from the other chamber, and then they have to rush into the other chamber. But I think over time, that has been streamlined, and now from the other chamber, somebody can just indicate that they want to speak, and they are given a chance, and in advance, they can know that their turn is coming, and they can quickly come into the House. So the hybrid model entails combining the current system as it is, and one that allows the senator who is not physically present in the House to participate remotely through a designated virtual forum. Mr. Speaker, there are certain specific amendments that are also recommended in this particular report in Appendix 1, just to go through some of them very, very quickly. And one is a sitting of the Senate where a physical sitting is not possible, as the Speaker might, in consultation with Senate Business Committee, determine. So that is now formalizing that specific process, and this will be both for the plenary and also within the committees. The Speaker may also issue guidelines for the conduct of a virtual sitting of the Senate or a meeting of the Committee of the Senate, including guidelines for the effective participation by persons with disability in a virtual sitting or meeting. And that consideration is very, very important, so that, for example, in a parliament where we have a member who is otherwise abled or gifted in a different way, for example, if it is somebody who needs, for example, to use Braille, that is availed to them, because this system should not create further inequalities in any way. And Mr. Speaker, if I may just refer quickly to what has happened in the educational sector and a big debate over time. Because in many of the schools, for example, where virtual learning has taken place, we know that it's not all students who have been able to have access to this virtual learning. So it is an experience, and I know even within the University of Nairobi, for example, and other universities countrywide, people are grappling about the issue of how to issue exams and how do they handle it at such times. Is this student going to fill an exam form somewhere alone, for example, at a cyber cafe? Will that exam be valid? Should the exam be maybe more critical analysis oriented rather than memory recall? And all these issues are coming. It's the same issues that would come within the precincts of a Senate like here.